Welcome to the Hill Country Review. I'm Drake.
And I'm Trevor. And in this video series, we're going to be talking about cars, food, music, and just about any topic that we feel comfortable with talking about that day.
We'd like to start out today by talking about classic cars, such as, what is a classic car?
Well, classic car is a vintage automobile.
So, an old car.
Well, not every old car is a classic. Some old cars are just old cars. Not everything that's old has value.
Okay. So, on the property right now, we've got a Fiero.
Yes, the 1985 Pontiac Fiero, I believe it is. It could classify as a classic because it's a rare enough car. They made them for just a few years. We'll say 10, but I don't even think it was 10 years. I think that they were less than 10 years. But this particular car, I don't know. I don't fit in them very well. I really don't.
It's not a... I don't fit in it very well. I have a hard time getting in and out of it.
I don't see why you would. That car is built for women your size.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah, it might be rough, but truth hurts. But yeah, so I don't know if that would be considered a classic car. But it does have potential of being a classic car. And we'd love to hear other people's comments about this. What do you believe a Pontiac Fiero is? Does this classify as a classic car? Does it classify as a old car? Does it just classify as a piece of plastic crap that should be in a junkyard somewhere?
There's probably quite a few people that'll think it's the third option.
I imagine if they're not in the cars, they probably would. If people are in the cars and they have the thoughts of preserving the old vehicle, driving something that has a little bit more style to it, that's not just another automobile.
Does the Fiero classify as a car with style?
Oh, very much so. It had a 4-cylinder engine, wasn't very powerful. It's a 2-seater. They had some creative ideas, such as speakers built into the headrests and some really goofy things that went along that. They did have problems with fire, but they were a mid-engine car, so by all means, the engine really sat over the drive axle on this car, which kind of gave it some pep to a certain degree. It would just move along with no issues whatsoever. Very comparable to something like an MGB GT, but the MGB GT engine's in the front, rear-wheel drive. Triumph GT6 engine's in the front, rear-wheel drive. The MGB GT is a 4-cylinder, where the Triumph GT6, of course, is an inline 6. But it has just enough style. It's almost like a poor man's Firebird to a certain degree. A lot of the same styling on this Pontiac Fiero would look that of a two-door, they're all two-door, a 2-seater Firebird that's been cut down to size to make it very small. It was the ultimate girl's car of the 80s, probably. That, along with the Volkswagen Cabriolet convertible Rabbit, very much a girl's car of the 80s. You'd see guys drive them, but I think they were probably gay. Even Elton John would have said, "That's gay."
What's his name on Top Gear? The American version of Top Gear. Tanner.
I don't know any of those guys. I've never watched the American version of Top Gear. I don't know what the point of that is. Why take something good? Damn it. This is Stratocaster. Stratocaster likes to get into everything. Goodbye, cat. Where were we on this? So,
Top Gear.
Top Gear, yeah. See, the original Top Gear to me, these guys were guys that talked about cars, and that's wonderful. Then you got these guys that come into America, and they talk about cars. They're not much different. They just show their opinion. So I guess, hey, we're Top Gear now.
Pretty much. We just need a wannabe pretty boy who likes tuner cars, but...
I know a lot of those. I don't really see the point in a lot of these things. I mean, I don't believe in watching movies and getting excited about cars. I mean, I like the movies as well as the next guy. I just don't necessarily think that every car out there is something to jump for joy over. But at the same point in time, I have a thing for cars myself, as you know.
Yeah.
I like cars that really not everybody else has. I was driving around in a 1968 Triumph GT6 for my first vehicle. I had a Volkswagen Bug, which, everybody had a Volkswagen Bug. But that was pretty much the most common vehicle I really drove for the most part. I mean, my daily drivers are pretty well common vehicles. The 2000 F-250, Power Stroke, obviously. But, the 78 Jeep DJ5, it's not an everyday thing. It's a right-hand drive. It's something fun. It's something different. People still look at a DJ5 as they're going down the highway. And, or the city road. I mean, you get a lot of looks in this car. And it might be that I'm just an ugly guy.
It could also be that you're on the wrong side of the car.
It could be that I'm on the wrong side of the car. But...
Which the right-hand drive takes some getting used to.
Oh, I didn't find it taking any use to getting used to. I mean, I spent enough time watching left-handed people drive. It was pretty easy for me. A left-handed person driving on the left-hand side of a car is the most wrong thing ever. Keep those people home. A right-handed person driving a left-hand drive car is normal. You shift gears with your right hand. You watch somebody who's left-handed, and they can't shift gears to save their life anyway. There's a few. Don't let me go too crazy with left-handed people, because we know that left is wrong and right is right.
So, classic cars. We got sidetracked.
We are talking about classic cars. There's nothing sidetracked about this. How is that getting sidetracked?
Well, we went from talking about classic cars to the Fiero and how it kind of classifies.
So the Fiero is a borderline classic vehicle, yes. The reason why I say borderline is that, in my opinion, a classic car has to be built pre-1975. 1975 is when everything started turning to emissions control, catalytic converters, the emissions control stuff that slowed down your vehicle. But anything before 1975, you had some really decent cars, whether it was a Firebird or a Camaro or a Nova, which I've never really been into Novas, and I'm not really much of a Chevy guy. But the Mustang.
You don't hear about the Nova.
73 Nova, 73 Mustang was the last of the big Mustangs, really. Obviously, the best ones being 70 and 69. I think that was the most popular era. That's about the time that the Boss Mustang came out. And then your most popular Mustang, I think, probably would be your 64 and a half, as they call it, the 65, maybe 66, 67. 67, you got that whole thing that became a fad from the movie Gone in 60 Seconds with the Eleanor, which the original Gone in 60 Seconds, Eleanor was a 73. But the remake Gone in 60 Seconds with Nicolas Cage, that was, obviously the 67 Mustang, where they did a 67 Shelby GT, was it the 350, I believe, in that one?
I think so.
GT 500, GT 350, I don't remember. But it was a nice car. And now everybody goes crazy over that car, and just about every 67 Mustang out there is impossible to find because some schmuck in their garage is trying to build the exact same car that they had in the movie Gone in 60 Seconds. The problem with this is, yeah, it makes 67s more valuable to a certain degree because it took for every person to build that, they ended up tearing up 3 other cars to try to build the perfect 67 Shelby GT 350 fastback Mustang. You didn't like that stuff, Cap? Anyway, so as far as Mustangs go, that's kind of that. But a classic car, in my opinion, is going to be anything built pre-1975. I'm going to say, honestly, in my opinion, 74 and earlier. 75 really was kind of the beginning year of the end of the classic car. It used to be a car that was 20 years old. And then it was a car that was 25 years old. Then it was a car that was 30 years old. Now, there isn't really, I mean, you can have an old car. I mean, the reality of it is that trying to find a 92, I don't know, Chevy Corsica is probably even harder to find now than what it is to find a 1970 Camaro. But I don't know that the Corsica or the Cavalier will ever be considered a classic. I don't know that car will ever be anything more than just an old car.
Okay.
The silence needs to be broken. So obviously, if this douche nozzle can't talk, I'm going to keep talking, and people don't want to hear my voice, do they?
Okay, even the cat's looking at me like, speak, dipshit. I guess the question is, at what point would, you were talking about the Corsica, at what point would that be a classic car?
I don't know that the Corsica will ever be a classic car. Or the Cavalier. There's a lot of disposable cars that will never be classic cars, but there's a lot of old cars that were made pre-1975 that, probably won't ever be a classic car either.
Station wagon?
No, actually, believe it or not, station wagons actually do have a very... they have their own cult calling. There was a point in time where every junkyard in the world was looking at a station wagon, and so they did a station wagon that came in there was a 1955 Chevy Nomad station wagon. And they would crush it because nobody wants this car, it's a station wagon. But now, you take a 55 Chevy Nomad station wagon and you rebuild this car and you make a muscle car out of it or a classic car out of it or whatever, and you actually have something that people are drawn to. Even cars as low class that when they came out, they were just, in everybody's eyes, they were junk. They were something that was not sought after, and they said there's no way that this car will ever be anything more than just a pile of crap in a junkyard. The Edsel Ranger, an ugly, ugly car, but they have their own calling now, where there's a bunch of people that have fixed these cars up. They're showing them at car shows, and they're getting a lot of likes, and people are liking them because they're just that rare. Because so many people, when the car came out in 59, 60, in that general area, they were so against the car that it was just ugly. And so people quit driving them, and they were sitting out in fields rusting away, and nobody ever saw them. And then suddenly somebody came in the 90s, 2000s, and, well, there's an old car, let's fix this thing up. And they fixed it up, and suddenly they go to a car show, and it's like something that somebody hasn't seen, so it has a certain popularity to it now. And, I'm not from the era of the Edsel Ranger. I mean, some people said that the grill looked like a big zero right on the grill, or a horse collar, or a whatever. And it was kind of ugly to that certain degree. And I know that you have no clue what I'm talking about here.
No.
But these are conversations I have with another friend of mine that maybe eventually will be on this channel. Maybe by way of, I don't know.
Oh, we could do Skype or Zoom
Something
or something.
something to that effect. Yeah, we'll figure this out. Or we'll end up going to New Mexico because I'm going to collect money from him. Hopefully he watches this.
That's not intimidating at all. So,
but yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of cars, but and the world's full of cars. And the problem is that you go back 100 years. I mean, it is now what 2020. So let's go back to 1920, and let's grab a car from 1920. I don't have one off the top of my head, but let's just go ahead. I don't know what year, but the Stanley Steamer.
I got one. It's not 1920, but the Chevy Superior K.
What in the hell's a Chevy Superior K?
Early 4-door sedan.
Approximate what year?
The one that I've run across was a 26.
A Chevy Superior K, huh? Is that Superior? Letter K or Kay or?
Letter K.
Letter K. I've never actually seen one. Now, that doesn't mean much. I'm going to have to review this.
Well, I've
Why don't
got
you
my
pull
computer.
down this computer here? Why don't you bring me up a picture of a
26.
26 Chevy Superior K.
And for those watching who are wondering what in the hell a 26 Superior K looks like,
We'll throw an image up here in a second.
we can... I can't spell.
Okay. So you're talking about one of these, they basically have the same basic body shape. I mean, it's a Chevrolet, so 26, I mean, we're looking at basically the Chevy's version of a four-door Model A, essentially. Let me see this thing here. Yeah, we're going to have to put this picture up here so everybody else can see it. Superior K, yeah. This is more of an antique car. But this would be considered a classic, and I can see doing something with it to make it a muscle car, hot rod, something that kind of a, deal there.
Well, you bring that up. How do you feel about people that rat rod antique cars?
What it comes right down to is that, let's go ahead and put this back. My thought on a rat rod or a hot rod or a muscle car, it comes right down to this. If we all like the same things, this world would be pretty boring.
Fair enough.
So, it's nice to go out and say, all right, we have a 1926 Ford, and this one's painted blue, and this one's painted black, and this one's painted white, and this one right here is very patinaed out, and this one has the driver's head sticking up through the roof, and this one, because if every last one of them was painted black, it'd be pretty dull. And once you've seen one, you've seen the last one. If they're all painted the same color, if they're all four-doors, then guess what? You have 200 million four-door black cars that all look alike. There's not a lot of difference between that Chevy Superior K and Ford's Model A, and probably the Dodge brothers had a car very similar to it, and I'd have to look it up as far as what the Dodge was of that same basic era. There was a lot of different car models, and going on to that car model thing, there's been so many different car manufacturers over the years. Most of them don't even exist anymore. You take cars like Studebaker and Hudson. A lot of these companies, even Pontiac, doesn't exist anymore.
Which is sad. I actually grew up pretty much in the back of a Pontiac Sunfire.
From what I understand, you were probably conceived in one too.
Probably.
So,
If my mother watches this, I'm sorry.
truth's out. He spoke it out. He was telling everybody at the state capitol how he was conceived in the back of a Volkswagen Bug the other day. But, yeah, so that, I think there's just different classifications all the way across the board of vintage and classic. So, a vintage car, really, to me, is anything that's pretty much original. Or classic. Vintage classic is basically the same thing, but it's anything that's pretty much original to make it classic. You start doing a lot of custom stuff, chopping the top and all that, it can still be classic, but
At that point, it's not.
It becomes a custom car, and a custom car can still be classic, but what makes it even more special is if you have a car that has been rotted out, hot rodded, whatever.
Rotted out. It sounds like mine.
Not rotted out. But if you have a car that was done up in the exact same way it would have been done, I don't want to say the exact same way, but if you have a car that's been customized to a certain standard of customization that it was done in the 50s. So you have a 1930s Chevy or Ford, and you do a lot of the same styling of customization they would have done in the 50s on this car today, then you have a whole nother special category that starts falling into a classic hot rod, where if you suddenly start putting turbos and things like this on the car that was built in the 1930s, now you have a new style of muscle car or hot rod, because this is not something that was really readily available in the 50s. So you have a 50s style, then you have a 60s style, and a 70s style, and an 80s style. And as time goes on, now you'll find people that are going to go out and put a diesel engine into a car, and put the turbo diesel in there, and put custom graphics and stuff all over the sides of the car. Just kind of like the whole Fast and the Furious movie type thing, where they had all that garbage on the side of the car, really. But, if they did this to a 1955 Chevy and put all kinds of graphics on the side and all that, suddenly that car would go from having that classic look to having this new age custom look, or the Millennium Edition custom look onto a vintage car like that. And I don't know that it would bring the same class to the car show, so to speak.
Okay.
I mean, what is your opinion, or in your opinion, what is the nicest classic car? If you could choose any car to build, one car to build, and call your one custom or classic vehicle, what would that be?
That's actually a pretty good question, because I am not sure. I mean, just about everybody would want that, you mentioned it, the 69 Camaro. I mean, that would be a great car.
It's a very popular car, yeah.
And I'm more Chevy. That's why I go to the Camaro. But it's a car that I would love to have at the same point in time.
We're not all perfect. I mean, that I guess sometimes you have to choose something that breaks down a lot to keep the other guy busy. That helps. But yeah, okay, so the Camaro, all right. So you'd see yourself as being the guy that wants to drive a 69 Camaro. Now, would that have a standard or an automatic?
I would have to get over some anxiety issues and learn how to drive a standard.
Wow, these kids today. You just gotta be the center of attention, don't you?
Friendliest stray cat ever.
We just found this cat. You know, it just showed up one day, came into the shop and said, "Hey, I'm here. What do you got for me to do?" And we told to fill out an application, but we don't speak Spanish, so we just kept him around to keep the floor clean. I know that was pretty bad. That was pretty bad. And you thought Trump was a bad president. Wait till next year when I run. I'm not running next year. I might be running next year, but not for president. For my life. But
yeah, that's what we
yeah, see, I think that you know, my car, the car of my ultimate dreams, I've lost it. Actually, you know, the reality is that when I was a kid, my father had a 1941 Buick 8, two-door 8. The Buick 8 is basically what I remember it as. I don't know that it had another name like Century or anything like that. It was a Super, Buick Super 8, I believe. Two-door business coupe, something to that effect.
Back to Google.
But you know, it was a nice car, and I've seen some that were.
You said a 41?
I said a 41, 1941 Buick Super 8. So, you know, this right here, that's pretty much your...
Try and find one that's not a video.
There you go.
So that one?
Yeah, pretty much. It was midnight blue. It says a Model 56 business coupe.
Actually, go back. That one looks like it might be the midnight blue.
Yeah, that could very well be. That's pretty much what it looked like right there. I mean, that's... It's been a long time, but yeah, that's pretty much what it looked like right there. So it's a business coupe, basically. You know, I guess that there's a part of me that kind of wants to have that car again. Fix it up. I wouldn't care if it was fixed up or if it was sitting, you know, pretty much the way I remember it as a child, being in the garage. But I guess that would be one of my ultimate dreams right there, is to pick one of those up. You know, it would definitely be one that I wouldn't sell. They're getting harder and harder to find, and who knows, maybe I'd get rich one day and I can find one that's already restored or something like that and just kind of keep it around. I don't know how much fun I'd be already restored, but it would still be fun. It would be one that I would definitely keep, though, and just wipe with a diaper and drive. I don't believe in having a car that you don't drive, mainly because a car that you don't drive is a piece of art, and you know, I don't mind looking at artwork, but that to me is a car show. Somebody needs to enjoy that car. If you put the car into a garage and wipe it with a diaper, and that car only sees 3 miles a year, if that, and spends all of its time traveling across country in a truck, that's not the way that car was ever meant to be. That car was meant to be driven down the highway and, you know, take your chance. Worst case scenario, it gets wrecked. But you know what? It got wrecked. It's a sad moment when a vehicle like that gets wrecked and destroyed. But it's a sadder moment when you keep a vehicle like that. I believe in a lot of ways these vintage cars and classic cars have a personality. And when you keep those cars locked away in a room where it doesn't see the highway, I think it kills the spirit inside of that vehicle.
I think a lot of things actually have some form of personality. I mean, I name all my guitars.
Yeah, you name all those Playboy pictures that you different names too, so you have a different girl every night. But
those already come with names.
That's true, but what were you screaming out that fat girl's name for last night?
Oh, God. Why do you got to do that to me?
All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and cut this show down to the end of the wine here. We've been talking about classic cars here, and this is something that we're going to be talking about a lot over the future. One of the other things that we'll do on this show is repair, restoration, just about everything on vintage cars. Buying, selling, we do it all. But as far as cars go, I mean, like I said, we are always interested in buying cars, selling cars. We have at any given time 20 cars on the yard here that we on the property or whatever that we that we do repair on, or we're going to rebuild, or we're going to do some work on. And then we have cars that we'll pick up for $50 and show a video. That I think that's the end of the show, because I have a call coming from my